My name is Joshua, 32 years old, a financial planner living in a small apartment on the outskirts of Chicago. My job revolves around crunching numbers, helping clients manage their money. But outside of work, I'm usually alone, listening to music or reading books to escape the noise of the world. I'm not the type who enjoys parties or standing out in a crowd. I value peace, punctuality, and perhaps because of that, my family always sees me as the reliable one. I'm used to standing in the background, helping without asking for anything in return, from paying rent for my parents to lending money to my younger brother, Logan, even though he's never paid me back. I used to believe that family was everything, the one place I could rely on no matter how the world crumbled. But that Thanksgiving changed everything. Thanksgiving was always a time for family to gather, but for me it felt like a performance I was forced to play. This year I braced myself for the usual questions. Joshua, when are you getting married? How much do you earn to still live alone like that? Or worse, the thinly veiled requests for money. But I never expected that dinner would shatter everything I once called family. The dining table was packed. My parents sat at the head, their hair a little grayer than last year. Next to them were my aunt and uncle, a few cousins, and Sarah, Logan's wife, feeding their young son. Logan, my younger brother, sat across from me, his smile as radiant as a spotlight. He always knew how to make people love him even without trying. I, on the other hand, was the quiet one, the one the family only remembered when they needed something. Joshua, pass the mashed potatoes, my mother said, her voice gentle but with a hint of awkwardness. I slid the dish over, feeling more like a waiter than a son. The meal passed with the same recycled stories. My uncle talked about his new job, my aunt bragged about her grandson, and Logan rambled on about his vague business plans, which everyone nodded along to approvingly. I just listened, nodded, and tried not to let my exhaustion show. Then, like a bolt of lightning in a clear sky, Logan stood up abruptly. The sound of his chair scraping against the wooden floor made everyone jump. He held his wine glass, his eyes gleaming, but not with the usual cheer. There was something cold, almost malicious in his gaze. My heart raced, a bad feeling creeping in. Ladies and gentlemen, Logan began, his voice booming as if he were giving a speech. Today is Thanksgiving, a time for honesty. I have something to share. About family. About Joshua. All eyes turned to me. I froze, my hand tightening around my fork, struggling to stay calm. Logan looked at me, his smile twisted. We've talked. The whole family has discussed it thoroughly. And we've agreed. He paused as if savoring the moment. Joshua, you're no longer part of this family. The air seemed to solidify. Somewhere Sarah gasped, but no one spoke. My parents lowered their heads, their eyes glued to their plates. My aunt and uncle exchanged awkward glances but didn't object. My cousins stayed silent, a few nodding slightly as if they'd known this was coming. Sarah clutched her son tightly, her eyes wide with confusion. I felt the blood in my veins stop flowing. An invisible blade had just sliced through my chest, the pain so intense it stole my breath. What? My own voice reached my ears, hoarse, as if it came from somewhere else. Logan, what did you just say? Logan shrugged as if he were talking about the weather. You heard me. You don't belong here. You always mess things up, always think you're better than us. We took a vote, Joshua. The family agreed. The family? I repeated, my eyes scanning each person at the table. My mother bit her lip, fidgeting with her napkin. My father stared out the window, as if trying to escape the moment. No one spoke up for me. No one. Sarah whispered something to Logan, but he brushed her off, still wearing that smug smile. I wanted to scream, to slam the table, to demand why. What had I done? Me, the one who was always there when they needed me, the one who paid rent when my parents were struggling, the one who lent Logan money time and again knowing he'd never repay me. But I didn't scream. I didn't slam the table. I just sat there, feeling like the world had collapsed and I was the only one who noticed. Then I smiled, a small, icy smile that I didn't know I had the strength to muster. Is that so, Logan? I said, my voice steady. The family decided, huh? Logan nodded smugly. That's right. You should leave, Joshua. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I didn't respond. Instead, I reached for the briefcase beside my chair, the one I'd brought with me that no one had noticed. I placed it on the table, the soft click echoing in the deadly silence. Everyone looked at me, a mix of curiosity and unease in their eyes. Logan frowned but maintained his confident demeanor. Before I go, I said slowly, I have something for everyone to see. Logan, open it. Consider it a parting gift. I slid the briefcase toward him. Logan hesitated, his eyes flicking to me, then to the others as if seeking support, but no one said anything. Sarah watched him, her gaze sharp as a blade. Finally, Logan opened the briefcase and pulled out a thick stack of documents bound in black with no label. He flipped to the first page and I saw it. The moment his face shifted from confidence to panic. His eyes widened, his hands trembled, and the papers nearly slipped from his grasp. What is this? Logan stammered, his voice breaking. Joshua, where did you get this? I tilted my head, still smiling. Keep going, Logan. Read it out loud. Let the family hear. I think they'll be surprised. Sarah reached over, snatching the documents from Logan's hands. She flipped through them quickly, her eyes scanning the lines, the photos, the receipts. Her face paled, then flushed red. Logan, she screamed, her voice shattering. Who is Mia? These places, hotels, restaurant, what have you been doing? Sarah's scream tore through the silence. My parents looked up, bewildered. My aunt and uncle started whispering. Logan staggered back, gripping his chair as if he might collapse. No, let me explain, Sarah. It's not what you think. But I knew, and Sarah knew, that no explanation would suffice. Those documents were the blade I had sharpened, and now they were cutting through Logan's facade. I sat there, watching him squirm, watching the family begin to realize how wrong they had been. But in my heart there was no triumph, only pain and a faint sense of relief because at last the truth was laid bare. Sarah's scream still echoed in my head, but I didn't look at her. Didn't look at Logan, didn't look at anyone. My eyes were fixed on the plate in front of me where the slice of turkey had gone cold. The entire family was silent, save for the sound of hurried breathing and the rustle of paper as Sarah flipped through the pages of the documents. I knew they were waiting for me to say something, waiting for me to explode or at least explain. But I wasn't in a rush. I wanted them to feel, even for a moment, the betrayal I had endured for years. Joshua, my mother spoke, her voice trembling. What is this? What are you doing? I looked up, meeting her eyes directly. For the first time in my life, I didn't see her as someone I needed to protect. I saw someone who had chosen to stand on the wrong side. You want to know, Mom? I said, my voice eerily calm. Let me tell you. Not just about today, but about everything that led to this moment. I took a deep breath, as if gathering strength from old wounds. From the time I was a kid, I was the obedient child in this family. I did everything you and Dad asked, from cleaning the house to looking after Logan when he was little. I didn't complain because I thought it was my duty. But as I grew up, I realized something. This family didn't value me for being Joshua. You only needed me because I was always ready to help. My father frowned, about to say something, but I raised my hand to stop him. Dad, let me finish. Do you remember when I was 18, working extra shifts to save for a car? You called me selfish for not sharing my paycheck with the family, but Logan, 16 at the time, asked for money for new sneakers, and you and Mom gave it to him without a single question. I didn't hold a grudge, but I remembered. I turned to Logan, who was now staring down, his hands gripping the edge of the table tightly. And you, Logan, you've always been the star. You're charming. You know how to make people laugh, make them love you. But you also know how to take advantage. When I helped you with your homework, you said thank you, but then you told your friends I was your nerdy brother. When I drove you to hang out with your friends, you said I was great, but behind my back you called me stingy because I didn't buy everything you wanted. Sarah looked at Logan, her eyes sharp as knives. Is that true, Logan? You said those things about your brother? Logan stammered. No, I was just joking. I didn't mean it, Joshua, you know that. Joking? I let out a dry laugh, the harsh sound cutting through the room. Joking is when you took my money to buy gifts for your girlfriend while your wife was at home taking care of your son. Joking is when this whole family sat here agreeing to cast me out just because you said I didn't belong. I turned to the rest of the table, my gaze lingering on each person. Aunt, uncle, cousins. Every one of you knows what I've done for this family. When Mom was sick, I paid the hospital bills. When Dad lost his job, I covered the rent. When Aunt and Uncle needed a loan to open their shop, I co-signed for them. I never kept score, but I thought at the very least you'd respect me. Instead, I was the easy target. I was the one this family could turn its back on just because Logan said a few words. No one dared meet my eyes. My mother wiped away tears, but I wasn't sure if she was crying out of regret or shame. My father rubbed his hands together, muttering something about a misunderstanding. But I didn't stop. I needed them to hear everything, to understand why I had brought those documents here. I don't blame you for loving Logan, I continued, my voice softening, almost as if I were speaking to myself. But I blame you for never asking how I felt. No one ever asked why I live alone, why I never talk about friends or dreams. You all saw me as a machine, always ready to give money, always ready to fix other people's mistakes. And today, when Logan said I was no longer family, you all agreed. No one asked me? No one. Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence, as if the entire room were holding its breath. Sarah clutched her son tighter, her eyes red and brimming with tears. Logan kept his head down, but I saw his shoulders trembling. Maybe it was fear, maybe it was regret. But I didn't care anymore. I stood up, walked over to Logan, and placed a hand on his shoulder. He flinched, looking up at me with panicked eyes. Now, Logan, I said, my voice soft but cold. Tell the family about the loans. Tell them what you did with my money. Logan shook his head, his voice feeble. Joshua, you don't have to do this. We're brothers, we can talk privately, can't we? Privately? I gave a faint, bitter smile. Like how you privately told the whole family I didn't belong? No, Logan, speak, or I will. Sarah cut in, her voice sharp as a blade. Logan, talk. What money? How much did you borrow from Joshua? Logan swallowed hard, his eyes darting around like a trapped animal. Finally, he mumbled, Just a few times. I needed money, so I asked Joshua. It's no big deal. A few times? I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. I reached for the documents in Sarah's hands, flipping to a page filled with numbers. Let me help you remember. The first time, March last year, you asked for $500. You said it was for car repairs. I gave it to you because I thought you needed it. In May, you asked for $1,000 to pay off your credit card. I gave it to you. Then in August, $2,000 for temporary difficulties. I still gave it to you even though I was starting to have doubts. I paused, looking at Logan. He shrank back as if he wanted to disappear. In total, Logan, you borrowed $12,500 from me over 2 years. Not a single cent repaid. When I asked what you used the money for, you said personal expenses. I trusted you because you're my brother. But you know I'm not stupid. I started digging. Sarah stood up abruptly, her voice trembling. $12,500? Logan, what did you do with that money? We weren't that desperate. Logan opened his mouth, but no words came out. I continued, my voice steady like I was reading a verdict. I hoped you used that money for your family, for Sarah, for your son, but no. You used it to buy gifts for Mia. To take her to 5-star hotels, to rent fancy cars, buy flowers, and dine at restaurants Sarah has never even been to. Sarah covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Mia, who is she, Logan? Tell me. Logan shook his head, his voice nearly breaking into a sob. Sarah, I'm sorry, it's not what you think. I was just trying to help her. Help? I cut in, tossing the documents onto the table. Help by lying to your wife? By taking my money to keep her? Logan, you didn't just betray Sarah, you betrayed me and this entire family. I turned to Sarah, my voice softening. Sarah, you deserve to know the truth. I didn't want to hurt you, but you need to know. Logan didn't just borrow money. He texted his friends calling me stingy when I refused to give him more. He mocked me, said I was foolish for always helping the family. It's all in there. I pointed to the documents now lying open on the table, exposing the messages, receipts, and the ugly truth. Sarah collapsed into her chair, clutching her son, sobbing silently. My mother broke down in tears, but this time I felt no sympathy. My father stood up, about to say something, but I raised my hand. Enough, I said firmly. I don't need to hear any more excuses. I just want you all to see clearly. I'm not the one tearing this family apart. I'm the only one who's been trying to hold it together, and I'm tired. I walked out of that house without looking back. The sounds of Sarah and Logan arguing, my mother's sobs, my father's meaningless murmurs all faded behind the slammed door. The cold November wind stung my face, but I didn't feel it. Inside me, a fire had just gone out, leaving ashes and a strange emptiness. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't stay. Not tonight, maybe never. In the days that followed, I didn't turn on my phone. I locked myself in my small apartment with the computer screen and a cold cup of coffee as my only company. I didn't want to hear explanations, didn't want to see apology texts or pleas. But I knew, no matter how much I tried to hide, the truth in those documents was like a bomb, and I didn't need to be there to see it blow everything apart. A week later, I received the first message. It wasn't from Logan or my parents, it was from Sarah. Her message was brief, just a few lines. Joshua, thank you. I've filed for divorce. I'm sorry I didn't see the truth sooner. I read it over and over, a mix of relief and sorrow swirling inside me. Sarah didn't deserve this. She was a good person, always trying to keep her small family intact. But Logan, with his selfishness, had destroyed it all. I didn't reply right away. I didn't know what to say. Instead, I opened my laptop and checked my bank account, a habit I'd abandoned since that fateful dinner. No surprise there. Not a single repayment from Logan, not a word about the $12,500. I gave a bitter smile, wondering why I'd ever hoped he'd change. A few days later, news started trickling in, though I didn't want to hear it. A mutual friend told me Sarah had moved out, taking her son with her. She rented a small apartment and started working extra hours to support them both. Logan, meanwhile, tried to cling to her. He showed up at her place begging on his knees, claiming Mia was just a mistake, and that he loved her and their son. But Sarah wouldn't listen. She had seen the receipts, the messages, the photos in my documents. She knew Logan hadn't just betrayed her. He'd mocked her sacrifices behind her back. There was no going back. Logan, having lost his wife and son, began to unravel. Friends said he was drinking more, showing up at bars with a gaunt face, muttering about how everything was ruined. He stopped going to work regularly, and his already shaky sales job quickly fell apart. I wasn't surprised. Logan had always thrived on people's affection, on his smile and empty promises. When the mask fell, he had nothing left to hold on to. My parents were the next to try reaching out. One morning, I saw 10 missed calls from my mother and a long text message. She wrote that she was so sorry for what happened, that she didn't know Logan had done those things. She said the family was struggling, that they needed me, that blood ties can't be broken. I read the message, my finger hovering over the screen, but I didn't respond. My mother's apology wasn't genuine. She wasn't sorry for turning her back on me, for believing Logan without asking me a single question. She was only sorry because now, with Logan no longer the golden son, they needed me again. Needed my money, my help. My father called too, but he only left a short voicemail. Joshua, you okay? Call me back. Not a word of apology, not a hint of acknowledgement. I deleted the voicemail, feeling as if I'd just cut an invisible thread. I used to think my father understood me, even though he was a man of few words. But at that dinner table, he had stayed silent, and that silence said everything. My aunt, uncle, cousins, none of them reached out. Maybe they were ashamed. Maybe they didn't know what to say. Or maybe, as I'd always suspected, they never truly saw me as family. I didn't dig for answers. I didn't need them. Logan finally texted me. A long message sent at 2 a.m, riddled with typos and desperation. He called me a traitor, said I'd ruined his life, that if I hadn't brought out those documents, things would have been different. He wrote, "You're my brother, Joshua. How could you do this to me? Do you want me to die?" I read the message, each word like a knife, but not because I felt guilty. It hurt because I realized even now Logan couldn't see his own wrongs. He didn't apologize for deceiving me, for exploiting my kindness. He only blamed me for daring to tell the truth. I didn't reply. I deleted the message, turned off my phone, and sat in the dark. For the first time, I wondered if I'd gone too far. Should I have stayed silent, let Logan keep living his lies? But then I remembered his eyes at the dinner table, that smug smile as he declared I was no longer family. I remembered the times he asked for money, his empty promises, the texts mocking me to his friends. No, I didn't regret it. I was just tired. In the weeks that followed, I heard Logan had moved back in with my parents. He had no money left, no stable job, and Mia, the woman he'd spent thousands to impress, vanished the moment he had nothing left to offer. My parents, despite their struggles, took him in, as they always had. They called it family, but I saw it as enabling. They never held Logan accountable, and now they were paying the price. Sarah, on the other hand, began rebuilding her life. She found a stable job, enrolled her son in preschool, and even started talking to me again. Once she invited me for coffee just to say thank you. "Joshua," she said, her eyes brighter than the last time I saw her. "If it weren't for you, I'd still be living in his lies. I owe you." I just smiled, telling her she didn't owe me anything. But deep down, I knew helping Sarah see the truth was the one right thing I'd done in this whole mess. My family, or what was left of it, continued to fall apart. My parents called a few more times, mentioning rent, bills, as if I was still the one who'd fix everything. I didn't answer. I was no longer the machine they could switch on whenever they needed. I'd said no, and this time I meant it. That night I stood by the window looking down at the empty street. I thought about Logan, his desperate eyes in that text. I thought about my mother, her insincere tears. I thought about my father, his silence. And I wondered if they'd ever understand what they'd lost. Not me, not my money, but the chance to be a real family. But then I shook my head and closed the window. That wasn't my question anymore. I'd left them behind, and though it hurt, I knew I had to move forward. I left the city on a gray day, my suitcase packed tightly in the back of the car, just enough for a fresh start. The old apartment, with its walls marked by countless nights spent thinking about family, was now just a memory. I didn't look back, didn't want to see the road that once led me to my mother's house, my father's, Logan's. I drove, the radio playing an old song, and for the first time in years I sang along, even if off-key. The new city was 4 hours away from the old one. I rented a small apartment with a window overlooking a park where children played every afternoon. I bought a cheap wooden table, a green sofa, and painted the walls myself. Those small tasks lightened my heart, as if I were building a home for myself, not for anyone else. The new job was a turning point. I worked as a project manager for a startup where people called me by my name, not Logan's brother or the helpful guy. My colleagues invited me for beers after work, laughed about minor project mistakes, and for the first time I felt like I belonged somewhere. The pay was better, but what I valued most was the respect. Once my boss patted my shoulder and said, "Joshua, you did great work." A simple sentence, but it brought a sting to my eyes because I realized it had been so long since I'd heard praise. I stopped checking my phone every hour. I no longer waited for text from my mother or hoped for an apology from Logan. Sarah was the only one I kept in touch with. She texted me, sharing updates about her son, about how she'd just been promoted in her part-time job. "The little guy started preschool," she wrote, attaching a photo of him grinning ear to ear, holding a ball. I smiled and replied, "He looks like his mom." Sarah didn't talk much about Logan, but I knew she was rebuilding her life step by step, just like me. I started volunteering at a community center. I didn't have grand plans, just wanted to do something outside of work. But there I found joy. I taught kids to paint, helped fix bicycles, or simply sat and listened to an old man tell war stories. They didn't know my past, didn't know about the family that turned its back on me. They just knew me as Joshua, the guy who always brought coffee and was ready to help. Once a little girl gave me a scribbled drawing and said, "You're the best uncle." I kept that drawing, taped it to my fridge, a reminder that I could still create something good. I also reconnected with a few old friends. One evening I met Mark, a college buddy, at a small diner. He asked, "You okay after the family stuff?" I took a sip of beer, thinking for a moment. "I'm okay," I said. "I lost a lot, but I found something more important." Mark nodded, not pressing further, and I knew he understood. Friends like Mark, moments like that, helped me realize I wasn't as alone as I'd once thought. The new life wasn't always easy. Some days I missed my mother, the smell of her Christmas cookies. Some nights I thought about Logan, wondering what he was doing, whether he felt regret. But then I'd turn on the light, brew coffee, and remind myself that I'd chosen this path. I was no longer the one chasing after family, no longer the one sacrificing to keep the peace. I was Joshua, and I was living for myself. One day, Sarah sent me an envelope. Inside was a handwritten card, her letters slanting gracefully. "Joshua," she wrote, "thank you for giving me the courage to start over. You're strong, and I hope you know that." I read it again and again, a warmth spreading in my chest. I folded the card and tucked it into a drawer alongside a few small keepsakes, an old photo of me and Sarah, a badge from the volunteer group, and a scrap of paper I'd written to myself, "You are enough." Sarah's card was proof that I'd done the right thing, not just for me, but for her. One Saturday evening, I sat on the sofa, a cold cup of coffee on the table. Outside, rain pattered softly, the gentle sound pulling me into thought. I thought about family, not with the pain I used to feel, but with a strange curiosity. Had I been too harsh in cutting them off completely? Should I call my mother just to hear her voice? Could I forgive Logan, if only to lighten my own heart? I stood up, opened the drawer, and took out the old photo. It was from a summer vacation when I was 18, Logan 16. He stood next to me on the beach, grinning brightly, his arm around a volleyball. My mother stood behind us, hugging us both, her eyes glowing with pride. I stared at the photo, trying to recall how it felt back then, when we were still a family, when I didn't yet know about the lies, the times I'd been used. But then I remembered Thanksgiving dinner. I remembered Logan standing up, declaring I was no longer family. I remembered my mother's downcast eyes, my father's silence, and how no one stood up for me. The good memories didn't vanish, but they couldn't erase the truth. They had chosen Logan, chosen the easy path, and I had paid the price for it. I put the photo away, closed the drawer. The question lingered. Had I been too rigid? Maybe. Maybe I'd shut the door too quickly, leaving no room for reconciliation. But then I thought of Sarah, how she rose after being betrayed. I thought of myself, the days I woke up without guilt, without the pressure to fix everything. I'd said no to my family, and in that no, I found myself. I stepped outside, grabbed an umbrella, and walked in the rain. The droplets slid down my face, cool and clear. I no longer needed answers to my questions. Whether to forgive, whether to reach out again, those were my choices, and I'd make them when I was ready, if I ever wanted to. For now, I just needed to live for Joshua, for the days I woke up with a smile, for the people who called my name with sincerity. I stood in the rain, tilting my face to the sky. For the first time, I felt enough. Enough to let go, enough to begin, enough to be myself.